Hello and welcome to Law Deals, where we explore law firm succession, partnerships, purchases, and sales. I'm Ed Alexander, and today I'm excited to be joined by Bill Umansky, known to the world as the Lawman. Bill operates a prominent personal injury and criminal defense law firm here in Orlando and has spent the past 30 years not just practicing law, but mastering the business of law. He now coaches fellow attorneys on building 7- and 8-figure practices while maintaining work-life balance. He's the co-author of the Amazon bestseller, Tiger Tactics, Powerful Strategies for Winning Law Firms, and the host of the Lawman's Lounge podcast. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Bill is also the founder of Second Chance of Florida, an educational scholarship foundation, and lives by the motto, everyone deserves a second chance. Welcome to Law Deals, Bill.
Hey, I'm happy to be on, Ed. I'm excited actually because I had you and your daughter on my podcast, so we finally took us a while to get connected. I think most of it was my fault, but I don't know.
Back and forth. Yeah, no, it's great. I'm really looking forward to it too. Now, one thing to know is that Bill and I lived around the corner from each other for a better part of 20 years. And that's, I think, how we first met, maybe met through another attorney that we know in town. Bill, take us through your journey from becoming a lawyer to starting your firm and then to growing it where it is today. What were some key turning points for you?
When I went to college, I got thrown out of several high schools. So just to go quick and dirty, I went down to University of South Florida, went to school there, worked full time, was in student government, and learned quite a bit about business, restaurant business especially, which is, I think, the best place to learn how to hustle, and the bar business. So then went back to New York, worked as a paralegal at a big fancy law firm, just a major firm on Wall Street and also on Park Avenue as a paralegal. Not for this show, but learned quite a bit about the underbelly of these large firms. And my takeaway is that you could put a suit on a man or a woman, lawyer. Back then it was mainly men, unfortunately. And you could have them go to the best schools, and they are definitely brighter than many of the lawyers that don't go to those schools. But business is business. And in the hustle of business, whether you're wearing that beautiful suit, going to that fancy Ivy League school, it was just as nasty as every other law firm. You get me? Like, doesn't matter if you're working at XYZ firm that's got all the letters on the board. When it came to clients, it was ruthless. And that was a takeaway that I learned. Although most of my bosses there made fun of me, and also the paralegals and law clerks that were in my class that year, because I went to a state school, they made fun of me. But the one thing I knew from my bar business was this is no different. You know, the clients are different. Trump was a client of the firm back then too, by the way. And he was just one of many Trumps that worked. They're all commercial real estate developers. So I learned not everything's what it appears. So that lesson was actually key and pivotal for me. So I went to law school at UF, University of Florida, became a prosecutor, worked on the Hill for a little bit. One summer, came back, worked as a state attorney, then worked for the city of Orlando, then opened up my own firm after working for a couple PI lawyers. One PI lawyer and another lawyer in town. I realized I wasn't made for working for people, and had no real business background other than how to hustle. So opened up my firm, had many trials, never lost a trial, which was a mistake because my ego had gotten to a point when I was at the state attorney's office that I couldn't be controlled. I couldn't delegate anything. Had to control everything. I was psycho. So used to yell and scream a lot at employees, people that couldn't rise to my standards. I lost my first trial to a lawyer that was she just wasn't as good as I was. And that was probably the best thing for me because it shook my entire confidence level. Imagine going 100 trials, winning them, then losing to a lawyer that is not good. And because of mistakes that I made, and then realized oh my God, and that was a big lesson for me. I learned. But that still wasn't pivotal. I still was yelling at people in the office, working 80, 90 hours a week, sleeping on the front porch. My wife's a lawyer, but if I come home late after going out, partying, or trying to get business, she'd make me sleep on the porch. So, the pivotal thing was I hired my wife. And it wasn't that my wife she's a good lawyer, very good lawyer, but it wasn't that she changed my practice. It was more that I couldn't tell her what to do like everybody else. Because if I'd say, Zara, I don't think you're emotionally intelligent, or I don't think that you know how to communicate with your clients, which I did tell her. I don't want to curse in your show, Ed, but she would do this. And basically this. And you may know a little bit about my wife. So really from that experience, it's not that my wife taught me anything about business. In fact, she'll tell you she doesn't know much about business, but she did teach me fundamentally how to delegate, because I was scared of her, right? So I was forced to delegate. So the next few attorneys that I hired, I learned to delegate. And when those first mistakes were made, didn't have the need to take it back. Of course, I felt that way, but I didn't. And that was the key thing, is learning how to delegate, I think. That was the pivotable. Is there a word, pivotable?
Yeah.
Or pivotable? Either one. But it was like, that was the key thing for me. And it got me into then starting to look at coaching programs, losing that trial and basically having the ability to delegate. I think the ego, started doing self-work on getting rid of the ego. I joined Strategic Coach up in Toronto.
Yep. Dan Sullivan's program. Yeah.
And I started doing a lot of self-work. And I think that's what changed. And so now we have like 35, 38 employees. A very good many of them are overseas. Of about 10 lawyers, just hired another one. But, all that stuff too, another pivotal thing was after maybe doing this for, been in practice 30 years, I was not data driven, not KPI driven, and not money driven. So I like making money, but I paid people back then in different ways, bonus without KPIs, created no culture. So I got rid of my ego, stopped yelling at people, but then I was kind of all over the place. And so 2 years ago, I hired a CFO, and I wish I had done it 15 years ago when I had started, or 18 years ago when I started Strategic Coach, when I was told to hire a CFO, but I refused. So that's the best thing that I could tell you. So you're always evolving, right? I'm 58 and I don't plan on retiring soon. So there's more things I want to do. And even today, I have a new idea about how to get business. So
nice. A lot to unpack there. So I think, from just an overview standpoint, right? Every lawyer, the number one problem I see with lawyers is delegation and the ability to hand something off and let it go. And clearly, your personality is an intense personality. If we looked at the DISC profile, I'd say you're a high D, extremely high D, which means that you're basically demanding and want to be in control of everything.
It's funny. So this is what's interesting about that. And I'm looking at my DISC profile now. My DISC profile 20 years ago, I was completely a high D.
Right.
Actually, I'm not a high D anymore. And I want to pull, while we're talking, I'm going to have my executive assistant pull my DISC because it's changed, actually. And I actually used to be type A, always in control, everything I told you about. No, my personality tests have completely changed. I'm actually labeled as a free spirit now. And not only, yes, 100%. And for a Taurus, that's different. It's not the same anymore. My influencer on DISC is a 98. Okay. What is the risk part?
Being risk adverse is S, so steady.
Yeah, no, I'm really low. I'm a 4 on one of those things.
Absolutely. So ultimately, like an SC is a real risk averse and follow the rules kind of person, good relationship builder. A high I, and most attorneys that are PI attorneys are kind of the DI, right? So dominant, want to go out there and win. And then the I, the influencer, loves people, that kind of thing. So you've been able to adapt.
Yeah, I'm going to get back to you on that. I'm having him send it to me, and let's revisit that because my personality test completely changed. I did Kobe. All of it's changed over the years of coaching. I started getting into EOS. I did therapy for a while. Actually thought therapy was a waste of time. I did 9 years of therapy when I was younger, and so always looking backwards, not forward. So I
Yeah.
got more into life coaching, and I thought that was much more effective actually. And my disc changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
So the domineering part really just a lot of that washed away. I
Yeah.
think when I'm under stress, it can come back, but I've had it under pretty good control. I think the last time I lost my temper, really, we had I'm friends with him, but we had and we'll talk about it later, building bridges with people. But I had a really good salesperson here who he just caused so much strife, and we laugh about it now. He works for a competitor of mine, but works virtually. But he worked not virtually in my office and was such a problem. And one day, I threw him out of my office. I'm like, get the f out of here, because he insulted my former chief of operations, who'd been with me for 18 years, and I was just like, dude, you got to get the f out of here. But I
Yeah.
remember, like in the old days when I was a trial lawyer, it would be worse. Like it would be like the f word be used many times, and I'd be in his face. I just laughed and go, get out of here. But I mean, that happens maybe once every 5-10 years now. I don't have that deep personality is kind of dissipated, bro.
Yeah.
Through a lot of
I
self
think,
work.
yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're getting results from making changes for yourself, and those results are where you want to be. So you can delegate. You've got a team, things happen. So that's great. So you mentioned coaching, and I know you're also pretty heavily involved in mastermind programs. You participate in them and run one. So talk about how you're running yours and kind of the value proposition that you've received and that you want to give to lawyers through your mastermind program.
So about 12 years ago, I joined a mastermind. His name is John Fisher. It's the Mastermind Experience, and we all got around this table. There were very, very accomplished personal injury lawyers there, all about 8-figure lawyers. It was interesting because they all, many of them already had a plan in place for selling their practice. And so the topic was about selling their practice. And I got up there and I said, I don't have a plan because I think I'm going to die in 5 years. But I did it in such a way, because I haven't tried cases in a long time, that I had grown ass men crying. And I remember John Fisher looked at me and I was like, yeah, who needs a death plan? Who needs a plan when I'm like going to be out? And obviously that too has changed over the years. Now I'm like, why did I ever say that? I should never have wished death upon myself. But what I learned from that was my first learning, like, man, you have to have a plan, right? So we went around the table, listened to everyone's plan and what their struggles were. I started facilitating the next mastermind after that, or the next one after that, helping John out with groups, because I found that I was really good at, like, everyone tells lies to themselves, including myself. But if you can unmask the lie you tell yourself, you can get to the problem quickly and solve it. And there's nothing better than solving people's problems. And that's why we became lawyers in the first place. So, masterminds are great because you sit around the table and your ego's on trial. You have all these people that are cutting into you and making you feel stupid. Even a couple of years ago, I went to one, and I have a young friend, Adam Rawson, down in West Palm Beach. The reason why I got a CFO, he's like, man, it's just scary that you've only had like 6-7% growth while you add all these people. It makes no sense to me. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, it's pathetic. And I looked at him, I'm like, part of me was like, the old me want to hit him in the face because I know I could beat him up. But the second was like, he's right. And my face turned red. And I was like, you know what? Enough. After 28 years, I got to hire a CFO. It's ridiculous that a younger dude is telling me this. So I facilitate these masterminds. Windy City is another one. I help out another buddy of mine, Mario Godoy. I started doing my own maybe a couple of years ago, but I wasn't consistent. Now I have a business developer, and we are running them every quarter, and we get groups of lawyers in locally. Now that's pretty amazing, because what happens with most masterminds, this, Ed, right, is
Right.
that they're national. So if I'm sitting in front of another lawyer in another room and he's from Chicago, I can tell him I'm upset with my partner, I'm upset with my wife, I'm upset with this, I'm upset with that. And that's not really going to go anywhere. It's not going to go back into your community. Of course, it could with social media and everything, but it doesn't. But imagine doing a mastermind in your neighborhood with people in the same practice area and getting them to trust each other and
Yeah.
still letting them know. So we had one lawyer who
We gotta
admitted
trust
that.
each other and put out the best information, right? Because we all have good ideas, and really that you got to feel comfortable for that to flow. So the non-disclosure, the confidentiality has to be there. Plus, you have to be comfortable that they're not going to take your idea and do it better than you did.
Yeah, exactly. But in able to do some of that work locally was pretty amazing. We got people to open up. Some would tell us about lawsuits they had against them. Others would tell us about their disputes with their partners. I was shocked that we were able to develop so much trust that it stayed within the circle. And so our mastermind's slowly growing. We only do one room. I'm now charging for them, but it's a modest fee. It's really building a tribe, helping those people out should I want to coach. And also we get referrals from that network as we build it. So, but like everything else, you got to be consistent. If you do it like once a year, it's not going to work. So you got to pump it out every quarter. And I've been doing a lot for a lot of other people for free. So the good thing is I have resources now to bring in people that are willing to do it for free. And we just started our own mastermind. There's a group of us, 8 of us that are meeting informally in Dallas. They're all 8-figure law firms, 7 on the cusp of 8, 2 are 8. They're the largest criminal firms in the state. And we're doing our own mastermind. We're not charging each other. We hired a sales consultant for $20,000. We're going to bring out our teams. And so I just love it. I mean, it's a good way for lawyers to bond. It's real stuff. I usually give a "How you doing" speech, which when I was at a cocktail hour last night, and I can't stand them because like, "Hey, how are you? How you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good."
Everything's great. Yeah.
So the person that asks the question doesn't give a. Am I allowed to curse on your show?
That's
Doesn't
right.
give a fuck. Doesn't want to hear. Well, I was thinking I might want to leave my family and move to Europe for be by myself for 8 years. Do you really want to hear that? No. And then the person answering the question is not going to tell them that. They're just going to be like, I'm good. So I hate those spaces. When I was single, they had a reason to be there. But when you're not single and you're trying to generate business, it's just a shit way from my mind to generate business because you're like talking about some bullshit. Oh, yeah. How's it going? How's business? How's
There's no
this?
relationship there. It's all top level, right? I mean, and
Yes.
ultimately what you're talking about is
Yeah.
the only way to really get to the core of the problems is through a relationship development. You got to, you're meeting every quarter. Hopefully you're talking in between the quarters, right? So people get to know one another. They care about one another, and they give good suggestions, right? Even though it was delivered harshly, I think Adam's advice to you was fantastic, right?
It was great advice, yeah,
And
and
maybe
that's
if it wasn't delivered harshly, you might not have heard it. That's a
right,
possibility too. So
right, and also from when there's a phrase about when the student's ready to learn, the master appears.
right,
It's also he's younger, and he's on my tail down in West Palm, and he's building his practice. And I don't see him as a threat, but we're very good friends. But it made me realize, like, look, I gotta take care of this. I'm not 40 like him. I'm 58, so I need to make
right.
some money before I retire.
He's done a great job down there. Fantastic job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're very good friends. Your daughter's down in his neck of the woods, right?
Yes, she's a little further south than he is. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, like even last night, it was funny. I'm not going to mention names because in Orlando, but there I was pulling in, and all of a sudden, this $150,000 Mercedes comes in, and steps out this lady that I've known for 20 years. I've known her since she was like 20 years old. Now she's got an 18-year-old daughter. She is probably the best in business for business development for personal injury. And it was the first time I think in 10 years that she showed up to a cocktail hour. So she doesn't need to. That's how good of a business developer she was. While all the rest of these PI doctors and lawyers scrounging around and MRI providers, this would go out and people will hate me. I don't give a shit. But what happened was I walked in with her. We've known each other. She's like the full package, smart. And she's like, Bill, she's like, I got social anxiety. I go, I've known you for a long time. And obviously it wouldn't look that way to people that don't know you because you're a complete package. But so it was so funny. But what was nice is she scooted off to the corner. Then people came and talked to her because they knew of her. She's nice, she's friendly, but she didn't make any, she hates bullshit conversations. And that's like not a way to do it, but she opened her own business. And so she's going to interject herself in that. And that's why I think the masterminds are so important because the relationships that you build there are not transitory and they're not based on alcohol. They're based upon real stories, it's real relationship building. And there's
On some level, so the mastermind is great, and I would do absolutely suggest and strongly suggest that people do a mastermind. The mastermind worked great for other attorneys and people that are in your space. So maybe if you did it with a professional services firm, accounting, or financial advisor, somebody like that, that's great. The downside to it is if you have a pretty deep referral source list, you're not going to get that. What you got to do is develop the relationship elsewhere, which is that one-on-one time, the ongoing communication, showing that you care. So, yeah, no, I mean, for those of us that get referrals from lawyers, the masterminds are great because they get to know who you are very quickly. I'm going to pivot for a minute here, Bill, and I want to talk about the building bridges and not burning bridges with former employees. I know that you've had some experiences that shape your philosophy on this, and I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so I just gave a presentation in front of the young lawyers the other day, and I hope to actually do it nationally now. I realized with speech building, like, used to give speeches nationally and then just can them, and sometimes they're good to revisit. And this one is one that seemed to resonate. The way you got to pitch it to people, though, is what's unfortunately I say is that it's actually good for your business financially if you build bridges with people that leave your practice. But that's not why I got into it. But I'm really big on building bridges with people that exit your practice. And, years ago, as you know, because we're older, people stayed for a long time. They would stay 10, 15, 20 years. I couldn't stay long enough at businesses because I either got fired or I quit. So I kind of knew what the newer generation was like. I'm not working with this guy or this woman. Screw that. And so I realized years ago, I think when the ego started dissipating, that there's ways to build bridges with people that leave. And I always ask this question. I'll ask you this question too. When do you think that starts, building a bridge with a person that's going to leave your practice? Meaning someone that you may fire, or someone that may quit on you, or someone that has a better opportunity somewhere else and wants to follow their dream.
When does it start? It starts day one, right? I mean, look, at the end of the day, even if you're firing somebody, you can still have a good relationship with that person. At least I believe you can. There are some people who I think, don't have a realistic view of the world. And when you terminate them, they're going to think it was something that was personal about them, not about the particulars of the job, right? But if you got somebody, and that's a failure of hiring when you have that, right? Because you should be able to detect that going in. But I think you've got to keep that relationship going, even if you're irritated with that person. You've got to have that communication going on early.
Yeah, I take the position that it starts even before day one. So I take the position that it starts in the job posting or the recruiting. So for me, I break it down into three areas, which is, how to attract the person that you want to hire, and then the hiring process, how you onboard them, and then the transparency of the offer. And then the second stage really is when they're here, after they're here working, how you evaluate them, how you train them on leadership, and how you develop a personal connection with them during employment, which is a tough one for some people. I'll tell you, my wife is completely opposite of that. So she says that, but she's had relationships with people that have worked here, but she doesn't want to really be friends with them. There's just a difference. I think that's not how you build a bridge, frankly. I'm not putting her down. That's the common. You'll have superficial relationships with people because you'll know of people that have relationships, and there's a negative downside to that, right? It's risky when you have personal relationships, because then you sometimes are not objective when they're not meeting KPIs or something. And then I think it's staying connected with them after they leave. And that's, you made a comment about some people can't acknowledge their own responsibility. I think because I was fired so many times, I realized looking back, like, man, I really deserved that firing. And some were pretty obvious, like telling a boss to fuck off, a partner in a law firm, like, look, dude, you cheap son of a bitch. I don't know why you copy on two sides of a paper. It's no wonder why you do collections work. You're probably not good enough for anything else. All right, you're fired. Like, shit. Like, I deserve that.
Came out of the blue. Gee, I don't understand why.
Yeah. So when I do have to terminate someone, I kind of understand. And sometimes, people do suffer from a lack of accountability. And our values are set. That's part of, not to digress, but in that second stage of coaching and evaluating people, you've got to hold them to the standards in your own firm. And we all fuck up, including ourselves as owners. But if we do that, then we're setting bad precedent. And the other day I came in here, I wasn't in a good mood. I should have left. I did leave, actually. I left before I was breaking one of our cardinal rules about being positive. And it was because I allowed someone to get into my negative headspace. They wanted to go on and on about something. I listened to them, but at some point I'm like, you sound like a victim. And I got to end this call. Like, I don't, I want to help you, but what I'm saying, getting back to that, is if you know what it feels like to be fired, even people that you let go, it depends upon the relationship you had with them and the trust that you have with them, how you evaluated with them. So they kind of know what's coming, basically, how you evaluate them, right? So I also think too that when you said day one, when I interview someone, the question that I ask them is, if you have all the money in the world, and by the way, sometimes there are people that don't want to make a lot of money by themselves. They want to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
You can find that out very quickly in a meeting without breaking any HR rules. I'm like, if you had all the money in the world, whether it's you, whether it's your spouse, whether it's an inheritance, you had everything you want, what would you do in 3 to 5 years from now? What would it be that you'd want to do? And, and then they'll give me some answer, because the first answer they usually give me, some are honest, but even in their honesty, before I ask that question, like, where do you see yourself? I want to see, we hired someone the other day who's like, I want to stay with you. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't even know me. And they're like, no, I'm a very loyal person. I've been at the public defenders for years. And I go, yeah, loyalty is not a thing for me. They said, what? I go, yeah, I like loyalty. I don't want people to lie to me. That used to be one of my values when I had ego, but I expect you to be loyal to me when you're working here, but you're going to follow your own dreams and you're going to do your own thing. And you're probably going to say some bad shit about me, actually. Yeah. Not because I'm a bad person. You're going to get frustrated with me. You don't think I know that people in my office,
that happens. Yeah.
They all do that. Like, and they don't need to share shit with me on social media to know that they trash talk me. But the thing is, where they trash talk you with anger, or there's some love in it, knowing there's some frustration. So I get to that point with a person I'm hiring, especially lawyers. I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to be here forever, probably. So What is it that you want to do? And when you get that answer, it opens the dialogue, Ed, for the rest of the conversation you want to have with people. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the most seminal questions in setting the tone of building a bridge with that person that's going to leave your practice one day. It's just, people said they're going to leave in 2.5 years, and now my managing attorney's been here 8 years. But one day she'll get pregnant, and she may decide, I've had enough. So, it just happens. And so you just need to really have those relationships built in place from attracting them, hiring them, onboarding them, evaluating them, and then really getting to know them. I didn't do a really good job with that. I'm bad with names, bad with numbers, but we had an employee who's been with me for 6 years. She just had a baby. I waited 2 months before I went to see them because, part of me is like, you don't want to see your boss. Like, you're trying to, she's trying to have time with her baby and coming back to work. I asked her, and I knew that it was genuine. She's like, it was about time you asked. But like, I went over and I saw them and hung out with them for about an hour. And, those things take effort. We've had people that we've had to let go. We've actually sent a firm administrator out to their house to see how they were doing, even though we knew, we suspected or had valid, been doing this a long time, right, Ed? You know this. You know what's going on underneath, but you go and check on them. And in the end, I think most people know it takes a nefarious person who gets terminated. Thank God there's not many of those people, the bad seeds. And that would be a bad hiring decision to hire one of those, which I learned a long time ago. So,
people, you make mistakes in hiring decisions because it's only it honestly is only a quick get to know you in that entire process, right? It takes a little while for the real person to come through. But you touched on a couple of things that I want to kind of reiterate. So the number one is the onboarding, right? And onboarding in law firms is notoriously bad. I'm sure you experienced it. I know I experienced it. It's kind of like, here's your desk. At that time, it might not even have been a computer when you and I started, but here's your desk, here's a computer, and here's a couple of files. Well, you'll figure it out. Go for it, right? So can't do that anymore. team,
Nope.
the people that are younger than us don't stand for that. They'll be out of there in a minute, and it costs you a
Yep.
lot of money to make the wrong hire, right?
Yep.
So that onboarding process really sets the stage of what the expectations are going to be. The next thing is that lawyers in particular, when they're hiring other lawyers, get all bent out of shape over, I'm going to lose cases when this person leaves, right? Because that person's going to walk out the door with some of the files. And I would say, yeah, you gotta be able to withstand that, because it certainly could happen, and we can't have non-compete agreements, all right, by virtue of the Florida bar rules, and frankly, any bar rules that I'm aware of. But you got to look at it this way: if you're building a business, and that business has systems and a team, and the entire team is taking care of that client, right? That's your staff, it's your paralegals, and it's the attorney who's leaving. You're reducing that likelihood that they're walking out the door with those files. Now, you may want them to do that. You may be okay with them doing that, and that's perfectly fine. But at the
Right.
end of the day, focusing on not growing your business because the possibility is that they'll take some files out the door is a huge mistake. So I like you're building the bridge and maintaining the bridge, because at the end of the day, people can cycle back. They can leave your firm, realize, hey, this was a great place to work, right? So I made a mistake by leaving Bill's firm. I went to go work over here, and these people are crazy, and I want to come back, right? So
Yeah, we've had that several times, but I don't even, what's funny? I don't even know if I look at it that way. So here's the deal. We just got a paralegal back. My chief of operations, who just left after 18 years last year, she was with me for a 12-year run, left, and then came back, and then was with me for 6 years. And then it's like, her and I, we love each other, but basically I disconnected from her at some point, because when we had leadership meetings, I didn't want to, I'm a confrontational person, but it's so funny. My wife doesn't scare me anymore. It took 30 years. I mean, no, honestly, it doesn't. Like, I'm different now, but it took me a long time to kind of be like really find who I was with
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
then, but basically I just transferred it to another woman in my office, a very powerful personality. And I'm going to send her this podcast after, and she'll laugh. But like, we at leadership meetings, we have EOS. You're supposed to call each other out, and I just didn't call her out. And it's my fault, right? I was scared, and I think it was because we had so much history together. So I think I don't look at it like, oh, they may have made a mistake. What I look at it as is different. In fact, I had a paralegal who left, and a couple went with her. That's bad when, hey, come to this firm. And
right.
one came back. I actually looked at it, even when that person did that, not as an evil thing. She wasn't doing it to get back at us. And I actually supported her children's stuff after she left. And I asked her, please don't do it again. And I support her in her workout journey. And I just think she's an amazing lady. And hopefully she's worked out an environment for herself that's good. There are others I've talked to that sometimes I'll talk to, and they, sometimes they are honest. Sometimes they're not. But if you've done the right thing, a lot of
Yeah.
times they are honest. They're
The
like, no, I'm
example.
not happy here anymore, but I am making more money. But I really am looking for something else. And they may not come back to you because you're not going to pay them that, but they may go to do something else or totally get out of it. So I don't look at it that way. And when it comes to lawyers, these guys, my managing attorney may want to buy me out one day, but what if she doesn't? I have two other guys that would step up and do it, and also take over my cases. If I had a lawyer leave, I just pay them. What's funny is I have money set aside. Like, if I lose one of my sex crimes attorney, he's been with me 8-9 years, he could leave. He's got dreams. They just named a courthouse in Tallahassee after his dad, who's a judge. We are very honest with each other. I love the guy. He's a great lawyer. He may not be here forever. He gets paid great. One of the reasons why he stays, but he may want to do his own thing one day up in Tallahassee. That happens. I got all these sex cases. He'll probably do the right thing for me. But even if he does the right thing, there may be people, he may have to move on at some point. Case can't lag on. He can't keep coming back. I'm not saying he's leaving, but he may eventually. And so these guys would come in and be like, hey, I'll pay you X amount of money to finish these cases out. They'll do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do it for me because, I was there for them during the process. So I don't think about, oh, maybe they're not going to like to be at the firm that they're at, or and maybe they'll come back. I honestly, Ed, never thought about that. I just look at it as they left. They're doing their own thing. I don't even think whether it's a mistake or not a mistake. I used to think all that. I don't want to think about that shit because it's all in my mind. Even if I think that they may have made a mistake or maybe they're not happy at their firm, then that's a negative thought. Like I prefer them to be happy. And I feel like when they see that you actually give a shit, you care about them after they left, even after they quit on you, even after sometimes they put you in a lurch, but they put you in a lurch. It's the same thing you do as a business owner when you have to fire someone. You put them in a lurch, right? They have to find money to support their family. You're the one that cut them off. Yeah. So it's just understanding the perspective of give and take. Some people leave, some people let go. I don't think that way. And I actually think as a result of that, I have relationships with a lot of these people. You know, I went to a party for a PI lawyer the other night whose competitors, we lost the person to them, but they were the one that recommended them to me when she was at another firm. Then they opened their firm and they took her back, but they took her back in the role she wanted to be. She wasn't in the roles that she wanted to be maybe at my firm. And she sent me a text going, "Where were you at the party? You didn't come find me." And I was like, that's my fault that I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I was so keen on the owners that I know very well, know for a long time, that I spent time with them and then left. And I just said, I apologize. I should have reached out to find you. That's my bad. And I didn't bullshit her and go, I was in and out. I was just like, hey, but that's why relationships matter. It takes a lot of work and it requires an effort. But for your viewers or listeners, the payback is also this. That woman that's in that firm referred us an $80,000 sex case.
Yeah. No doubt. Relationships pay off. I mean, it's 100% that relationships pay off, and they pay off in all sorts of different ways. You can't predict what it's going to be because at the end of the day, it could come up out of the blue. Well, so Bill, we only have a few minutes left. I know that you're not only a lawyer, you do other stuff, right? So you and Zara travel, and I see a lot of culinary creations from you. So talk a little bit about those things in your life.
I mean, Zara doesn't know how to cook except for breakfast, and she makes the best pancakes in the world. It's her thing that she does over and over again, and she literally I honestly think they're the best pancakes I've ever had. But she grew up in a Persian family. Her father was a doctor. Her mother's very intelligent. When they came over here, education was stressed and not relying on a man. So she didn't learn how to cook. And that's fine because for me, cooking is like life. We won't talk about the three most important things. And as we get older, one of those things may not be as important, but cooking is one of them. So food is life. And I just love like being able to prepare stuff. And I like cooking for her. She loves when I cook. Tonight, she asked me to go to the store. You know, it's funny. She's going to Whole Foods now or Fresh Market. I don't even trust her to go shop. And I'm like, I'm not giving you a list. You just get basic stuff. I'm going to go to the store and I'll buy out stuff and I'll make her stuff. But I think that's one of the fundamental things that provides enjoyment for me and relaxation. And I know a lot of restaurant owners as a result of that. And sometimes I've been able to go into their restaurants and actually cook. So, yep. And I'm going to be doing that next week. I don't tell anyone and we don't film it because that wouldn't be legal, or maybe not legal. It wouldn't be smart for the restaurants, but I'll go back and I'll cook one of the meals on the fryer. So it's fun. And then we travel a lot. I used to have a 100-day program, which is I have an app called the Marriott app. I don't think it's the best hotel program anymore, but I want to see at the end of the year that at least 100 days have been used. So if I feel like 1 out of 3 days has been used, and I feel like that's been a good year. And, traveling is key. I think, Americans or people that don't travel are kind of locked into, and by the way, there's no excuse not to travel, even on limited income. I learned that from my uncle. He was a guidance counselor with 3 girls. His wife didn't work. He's making very little money. They've traveled the world over 100 times. It may not be the same travel I take. It may be taking 3 connecting flights and flying economy in the back. But where there's a will, there's a way. And so traveling is probably one of the most important things that we do, and for our children. And the reason why I think my kids are successful is, I won't say, but I just say my wife went to bed at 10 o'clock at night, and my kids and I were all over Europe at 10 o'clock at night hanging out. And my kids learned how to navigate life that way and opened up by meeting a lot of different people from different areas. And travel is the most important thing, I think, in learning. You just get to see how other countries operate. People say, well, then you have more of an appreciation for your country. I'm not really sure about that right now. I'm thinking of leaving the country. And by the way, not because you think, because I won't get into who I voted for. It's not because of that reason. It's just I think I'd like to move out of this country. But by learning other cultures, you certainly learn. First of all, being away, one of the things that struck me, I went to London 20 times and never saw the Buckingham Palace until my wife and I went there several years ago. Mm-hmm. So I was never about tourist sites. It was about the people. And I could tell you that being down in South America and seeing people with very little money, or being in the Middle East, seeing people with very little money having fun, relaxed. It's, like there's some good things about that and bad things, right? They don't have the things we have. And by the way, they probably would envy those things if they saw them. But on the other hand, they're also less stressed about stuff and a certain happiness level that's involved with that. So traveling gives you insight into a lot of stuff about self-reflection.
That happiness piece is really key, I think. Glad you brought it up. I mean, it's interesting how I think at least Americans self-soothe very much on luxury goods in a way to bring happiness about. But if you look at the happiness index, it really clearly doesn't work. But that's a separate podcast for us. Well, Bill, I really want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been great. I appreciate all your insights. And tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, maybe learn about your mastermind program and what else you got going on.
Yeah, sure. So the easiest way is Bill is the Lawman at my Instagram. I like using that platform really for the most part. So it's Bill is the Lawman. I have my Lawman Lounge podcast on Apple, Spotify, and other channels. But if they send me a DM there, it's probably the best way of getting in contact with me. And the mastermind, all that stuff can be filtered through that channel, and then I can filter them to the right people to get them connected to that. So, and I really appreciate coming on your show. Your daughter, it's nice seeing her grow as a lawyer and, now as a wife. I don't know if motherhood's coming.
My wife wants it to come, but obviously that's up to her, up to my daughter.
I think I told you this, but it was so strange when your daughter came on our show. She's a grown-ass woman now. And I remember we just had, Ed, you're the dad, so I can't say, but we had this kind of conversation with each other. And then she's like, you just don't remember that I was like a little kid. I was like, okay, that just stops the whole conversation. I just don't, I remember when she's like 5 or 6. Now, how old is she? 28, 29?
And she's 32. She'll be 33 this year.
Yeah. She's always going to be 29. So it's just good doing your podcast, and I appreciate you so much. And we'll definitely hook up. I have to finish the questionnaire out, by the way.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it. And great talking to you.
Yep. See you. Bye.
Bye.